The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the hosts and guests, and not necessarily those of the staff or management of Worldwide Digital Broadcasting Corporation.
Right. Get yourselves together. Right. Stand up and live your life. Right. Get yourselves together. Right. Hands up high.
Welcome to the Rise Above Show. I am Joe Perroni.
I'm Heidi Mancini.
Terry Banich.
There
Nice
you go.
introduction.
Perfect.
I like that. Isn't that real
That's
good?
perfect.
I didn't have to get tongue-tied. It's easy last name. I was putting a ch on the end of it, a k, and I was
said,
it's easier to just ask, well, how do you pronounce your last name?
Do you prefer Terence or Terry?
Terry.
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 Now, the other question. Do you like to be called doctor?
No.
You don't?
No, I don't tell people I'm a doctor. You know, if my mother wanted me to be doctor, she would have named me doctor.
Because most doctors that are doctors, they want their name preceded. They want you to know that I'm Dr. Terence.
No, I think in a setting where I'm functioning as with a patient, they can call me doctor. And that would be appropriate. But I don't like to be called socially doctor. I don't go around saying I'm Dr. Banich.
Okay. So you're a very humble guy.
No, I don't know if I'd use that term on myself.
Of course you wouldn't, because you're humble.
But I think that it's a degree. The fact that people call you doctor, it's one of the last vestiges of honoring somebody. But I'm all into old-fashioned things. I open doors for ladies.
We're going to talk about that too. Because I looked at your resume and I saw your resume is amazing. What is it, like 15 pages long of all these incredible things you've done? But through that, I also wanted to talk about some of your family stuff.
Oh,
so
sure.
Is that okay? Yeah. Heidi, we have to tell people about our sponsors.
Yeah, we wanted to thank Jay Jung from City Athletic Club. He sponsors the Rise Above show. Also, Marie from, she made me say, please don't say my last name. So now I have to go on my phone, and it's Original Meal Prepped Las Vegas is the name of her company, Original. So and she also partners with our show Rise Above. She does meal prep for anybody. You don't have to be a contest competitor for her to customize your meal plan. So if you're trying to eat healthy, and we all have busy schedules, she's fabulous. She delivers to your home. So she's one of our partners with our show also. And we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So all of our sites, you can go there. We're also on YouTube now. All of our shows are archived there. And we are also on WWDBTV.com, which is where we're broadcasting out of right now. And you can also find the shows on josephperroni.com, which is Joseph's website.
Perfect.
So that's it.
All right, so Terry, you have been in the medical field for how long?
40 years.
40
I've
years.
been in Las Vegas as a general surgeon for now 37 years.
Wow.
Came from Chicago. Was in practice in Chicago for 3 years at Rush Medical Center, huge medical complex where I trained. And they wanted me to be chief of surgery. And I didn't want to do that because it's just a political nightmare. And I could not get the university to listen to me. You know, it's like, oh, you're going to do fine. It's great. I was never home. At that time, my wife and I were married, lived in the suburbs of Chicago.
How old were you then?
Early 30s.
Early 30s.
And so I had 2 children, 2 little boys, and would leave at somewhere around 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and get home at 9 o'clock at night. Never see the children, never see my wife. She would go to bed, and she was a nurse. That's how we met. But it was terrible. I used to drive my car on the expressway home, picturing this giant rut with the sun would never come in because I was just getting more and more entrenched into the university. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go out and take care of patients. I wanted to operate. And I arose in the university to be involved in all sorts of committees and against my will. And the only way I could get out of there was to leave. You know, my wife and I talked about it for a year and a half. And it was only when my wife said, "You're not going to do anything. You won't leave," that I just stewed about it and said, "I'll show you."
Good, that worked.
Yeah, so what I did was the next day I sold our house.
The next day?
Yes, I went. Our next door neighbor was this little old man that I loved dearly, and he was a retired realtor. And I said, "How much does it cost?" I went in the evening. I said, "How much does it cost to restate your license?" And he said, $2,000. I said, "I give you $2,000." I said, "Sell the house." And he said, "What are you talking?" I said, "Just sell the house." I says, "I'm going to make plans with no contingencies. Just move forward and not look back." And that's what we did. We were gone within it took about a year because it takes 6 months to get credentialed out here.
Right.
But we moved here because we went to a medical meeting. I was sent from the university to a trauma meeting here at Caesars. It's held every year. And my wife's old boyfriend that I heard about all my
Life.
Were you jealous?
No, he was.
life.
My wife talked about him so honorably, and the fact that she was 18 when they were dating and he was 33, I honored him in some bizarre fashion, because if he could pull that off, knowing my wife, it was it was a miracle. So we get married. We're married for a number of years. You know, I had his name in the back of my head, and so now we're going to Vegas. And having never been out here, you got to get yourself in a mindset of 1980, 79, 80.
Okay.
It's like, I know somebody in Vegas. He's a cab driver. Maybe he can get you, get you,
Get you somewhere.
get you a
Yeah.
deal. And I said to my wife, I says, "Call Bob." I says, call your old buddy, and maybe he can get us. He was a neurosurgeon out here. To make a long story short, we came out here to go to the trauma meeting, and met him at his house at Spanish Oaks. Back night,
That's when you
Sahara
dressed up
ended.
when you went to the casinos and everything?
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are the
So 1979, we're out here for this meeting, and he's a really nice guy. He's a very prominent neurosurgeon, and I liked him. So we're in his driveway, and two young boys from Gorman pull up. This is November. We left Chicago. The rain was at O'Hare, was coming down at 45-degree angles. And we come out here, and it's beautiful. And these two boys pull up, very nice kids. They came over, introduced themselves, shook hands. It's obvious that Bob had a good relationship with them. And they come out. One's got a snow skiing outfit on, and the other one's got a wetsuit, and he's got water skis. And I looked at them, and I walked over to the driveway, and I says, "You guys, what's going on?" He says, "No, I'm taking my brother down to the lake. He's going to go water skiing, and I'm going up to Lee Canyon to go snow skiing." I walked back. I walked across the driveway to my wife, and I said, "We're moving. Any place that you can water ski and snow ski in the same day, that's where I want to raise the boys." And so, no contingency. Sold the house when we got back, and just plotted ahead. And Bob was very gracious. Said, "I'll pass your curriculum vitae around." And by then, 3 years at Rush, at publications. I was doing 600 cases a year. I was very busy. And so when we got out here, Bill Rydell, who's now passed away, approached me and said, I don't want to compete with you, I want to be your partner. And so we formed a group, General Surgery Associates, 37 years ago.
Wow.
And it's grown, and now I'm the senior partner instead of the young kid on the block. But
you've helped a lot of people over the years.
It's, the one thing about being a doctor, or being a surgeon primarily, is that I have to build instant rapport. You're in the emergency room, and I would always think about this. I would think about what it would be like to be laying there as the patient, and Bozo the clown shows up, and he's going to take you to surgery. You're sick, but you got just seconds, if not just a second, to establish rapport with that patient so that you can take care of them. And so I used to always pray before walking in, make sure I was in the present moment when I'd walk in and not be distracted. And developing that instant rapport thing has always been sort of an avocation of mine. And that's why I did the Neurolinguistic programming and all that, because I wanted to learn more about it.
So how do you think, not to interrupt you, but how do you think that you were able to do that? What was it that you would say, or you think that you projected as soon as the patient would look at you?
I was always sort of sensitive, even as a young person, about not so much the content of what we talk about, but how we talk about it.
Right.
And how you interact with people. Not so much is what they have to say. You got to listen, but it's how they say it. That's what establishes the relationship.
Awesome. Did you learn a lot of these things and values from your parents?
I would have to say yes. I came from a family, I had 2 brothers. I had a brother and a sister, 2 siblings. Both are now deceased. My father was a plumber, never finished high school. I don't think he finished the first year. My mother never finished high school, worked as a shipping clerk in a trucking company. 3 kids. My brother was a surgeon. My sister had 2 PhDs, one in education and one in biology from Johns Hopkins.
Wow.
And myself. And I was a licensed surveyor in college. I paid by way. I used to make more money than my father did surveying, but I paid my way through school and met an awful lot of nice people. Guys that were working for a living every day. Those are the people I associate.
Values, when you talk about your parents having, the type of work that they did, what kind of values or what were they doing to make you and your brother and your sister?
I have no idea. I've been asked that question so many times. No, my recollection is that my parents never pushed education. They never directed. They were non-directive counselors. They did not tell you what to do. My sister was 9 years older than me. Marianne was a brilliant woman. Even when I was in grammar school, Chicago School District asked her to see if she could teach science to blind students. Prior to that, all blind children in Chicago would go to the Helen Keller to learn Braille, and that was it. These 3 boys had 180 IQs.
Wow.
And they were blind since birth. I think they were blind since birth. The last, and my sisters funeral, I met them again. One was the president of Northwestern Bank. One owned his own company, and one was an attorney. I mean, they were very, very successful, and they attributed it to my sister. She wrote the first papers on teaching science to blind students, and she used to corral my buddy Jimmy down the block. I'd have to go over to his house and get him to try to dissect a frog blindfolded.
Oh.
You know, I can remember my mother saying, "You're stinking up the house," you know. And those were fun times. And you know, the boys, they would come over to my mother's house because my sister lived there, and I was just a little boy, and I'd watch what Jimmy and I, you know, couldn't do it. Oh God, the frog, it's cold, you know. Yeah. And these kids, having never seen anything in their life and had such acute tactile sensation, could dissect the thing three-dimensionally, having not seen it.
So that inspired you to become a surgeon?
No, not really. I don't know why. You know, I look back at it. Somebody asked me, when did you decide to be a surgeon? I wanted to be a surgeon for as far back as I can remember, because I wanted the immediate gratification. I could not be a physician and take care of somebody with diabetes or rheumatoid arthritis. I give a lot of credit to those doctors. I couldn't do that. I want, oh, you're sick? We'll fix it. Thank you. Goodbye.
So you want the control?
I don't know if it's control. You know, that's one thing. It's a good word, but I don't have that. I know what goes on in that operating room, and there are powers in that operating room that I can't see, but control of them. I just appreciate them, honor them. There's a lot going around in our universe that we don't see or are attuned to, but I'm very attuned to it.
Have you always had that?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes. I've talked about this a lot with Joe because I'm intuitive, and I've had a little, not like yours, but to the same, and people don't believe it. They're like, oh, that's, not that he doesn't believe it, but I'm saying when you say about the universe, and we talk a lot about this too, with my clients. I just said this to a client the other day that was going through a hard time. She lost her job, and I said, surprisingly enough, whatever you think and whatever you put out there, a lot of times it comes back. And when you think about it, we had talked about this, and you had mentioned different things, and now you're being guided to where you're supposed to go. And I know where you're going with. You're going into more of a spiritual thing that goes on in the operating room when you're treating somebody. Yeah.
You know, you can feel it at times. And I've told patients, I says, you know what's in there? I says, it's your family. I says, that's the sense I get. I says, and sometimes it's crowded. You know, they're watching over the individual. It's, you know, I personally, my personal beliefs are that we're eternal, and this is just a minute fragment of eternity, and we have lessons to learn and things to do, and then we get another chance at doing this until we get it right.
I've said that wrong, but I'm gonna keep coming back here until I get this right.
Yeah,
I want to keep coming back.
It brings you. I've done in the last few years, since my wife passed away 4 years ago. I was very fortunate. I came across inadvertently a young woman who I first saw in a social setting and was so amazed at her ability to come into a room and in 15 minutes know everybody and actually just sort of control the whole situation. Not arrogantly, not in any way that she was acted proud or anything. She just had this karma. And so I started talking to her, and we became friends. And then she told me about, she would say things to me like, you're running a program. And I'd say, what does that mean? And she'd say, "You got biases and baggage from past things and you're running it again." And she says, "I actually think you got bags inside of bags inside of bags." And so she pointed me in the direction of PSI seminars, Psi seminars.
What is that?
PSI, or Psi, the Greek word Psi, is an organization that's been around for over 40 years. And they are based in Clear Lake, California, but they've got all over the world centers. There's one here in Vegas. There's 3 different programs that you can go through. Basic is the first one, and they're life skills. They're how to live your life, and they point out things to me that were causing me problems, the way I would think about things, but I didn't know that it was a problem, the way I was thinking.
Right.
And some of that stuff I got when I was a child. Biases and things like
You're
that.
supposed to be. When people tell you you can't do that because you're
Yeah,
not good
limiting
enough.
beliefs.
Right.
Right.
We talk
All
about that
the-
on our show.
all that
So,
whole
yeah.
stew of problems. This young lady said, "Before we go any further, you need to do this." And so I did all 3 of them because I saw the value. Now my son here, Robert's done them. The other 2 sons, one in Miami and one in Chicago, think this is Kool-Aid. They think that Dad's crazy. Dad's drinking Kool-Aid. And I actually, at one of the seminars that was a week long in California, they served Kool-Aid. And,
There you go. Maybe they're right.
and my son, before I left, said, "You're nuts. This is you're wasting your money. This is Kool-Aid." You know, he's an attorney in Chicago. So I brought a vial and took a sample of the Kool-Aid. And you know what he did? I mailed it to him. He had
Drink it.
$800 he spent sending it to a forensic lab to have it analyzed.
Oh,
Seriously?
Yes.
oh my
He
God.
really.
And it came back Kool-Aid. I have that. Honest to God, he is my oldest son, Terry, is an attorney in Chicago. He is something else. But I got to tell you, I was out there just recently to visit the kids. I had 3 sons. I have 3 granddaughters, and 2 of them are in Chicago. And I had the distinct privilege to tell Sadie, the 4-year-old in Chicago, the word no. I don't think she ever heard it.
Oops. Grandpa.
There you go.
Serving dinner, and she put on her tutu to show Grandpa how she learned how to be a ballerina, and she climbed up on a dinner table. And I said, "Sadie, get off the dinner table. Don't do that." And she just looked at me, and my son walked over and said, "Sadie, I'd like to talk to you about choices and how you
Now here's a
make,
generational thing.
how you make choices." And I said, "Sadie, get off of the damn table."
Yeah, that's your choice, right?
And
Do you know what my mother said to me the other day? And it's the funniest thing, and I don't know why. We were talking about kids, and she goes, "You know what's the matter with the kids today?" She goes, "I'll tell you, because they don't get abused like they used to." I go, "Mom," I go, "that's so hardcore." She goes, "No," and she was serious. She goes, "No, back in the day, you could spank your kids. Now," she goes, they get to do it all. She goes, "They don't, like you just said, they don't get told no."
Yeah, who's running the show? It's
They
supposed to be the
are.
parents,
The
right?
kids are.
when we moved here, 1980, my next door neighbor, our next door neighbor, and I went to dinner with him last night, he's been my friend ever since, was a child psychologist that worked at Boys Town. And he had a number of foster children. They had a teaching home. Craig would say things to me. You know, 'cause the kids are little then, and something would happen, and I'd be saying, "Well, what did he do?" You know, and then, "Oh no, well, Doug said you hit him." You know, and Craig would look at me and say, "They've got you playing the oldest game in the world." And you know what he reminded me of? Remember that TV program where that guy would look over the fence, and all you could see is his top of his head.
Yeah, what was that?
Home Improvement.
Was it
There was a Tool Time.
Tool Time, right?
Yeah, but he would talk to the guy,
Home Improvement.
and that's how Craig was, except for the hat and the high fence. And Craig would say, "They've got you playing judge and jury. It's the oldest game in the world. Everything is attached to everything else." And I said, "Well, how do you stop this?" Whatever he told me got processed by me as no good guys, all bad guys. So somehow in the universe, they're all connected, and the fact that you broke the window, and he said you did it, and so the oldest son would come home from high school, and I'd ground him, along with all the other ones, and all Tej would do is get out of the car and say, "What did they do?" I said, "I don't know. Go up there and find out." And what it did was it forged the three brothers very closely together.
Because they all got punished. They all got
it.
It didn't matter who did what first. You're all going to get punished.
Yeah.
Because somebody did something. Even if you look at them, you know how it is. You touch them. You do all the little stupid stuff you do as kids. Yeah.
Well, I got to tell you a story. This is one of the funniest things. The two younger ones. Tej is off to college. He's very brilliant. He's got 170 some IQ. So he's off to college or law school. And the two other ones are like 13, 15 years old. And it's summertime. First days of summer. They sign up for a little gym boxing aerobics thing. Mm-hmm. And I come home in the afternoon. They've been gone one day, to do this. And Doug, who is like 12 or 13, drives the truck in the driveway. And I'm looking at him, and it's like, Doug doesn't have a driver's license.
Not at 12.
What? I says, "Where's Robert?" He's always in the back. This is a pickup truck. Robert's out cold in the bed of the truck. And so I prod him, and Robert's moaning. He says, "I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him. Where is he?" And Doug is jumping around in the driveway, like this. So we get Doug to go up to his room to sort this out, and I asked Mimi, I said, "Where's the instruction book?" She says, "They didn't come with instruction books. I've been telling you that." And I said, "Well, what do we do now?" I said, "Doug's knocked Robert out. Robert's now downstairs with an ice pack on his head, really milking this. Mimi's got him an ice cream, and he's eating the ice cream. He's got an ice pack, and we got everything." Robert stopped seething. He's no longer going to kill Doug. And all of a sudden, from upstairs comes the theme from Rocky.
Yeah.
Robert ran up the stairs, knocked the bedroom door down to get to Doug, and Doug is cowering in the corner. Those guys are the best of friends. Now, they learned, Robert told me, they learned how to drywall, because Mimi and I came home one day, and it's quiet in the house, and it's like, we go upstairs, there's plaster, wallboard on the floor, and there's an imprint of a shoulder and a dent from a head at the end of the hall.
Oh my God.
And I'm looking at this, and I open up Robert's room, and Robert's sitting on the end of the bed, rocking. And I said, "Robert, what happened?" He goes, "Is he alive?" And I said, "I don't know yet." He says, "I'll tell you if he's alive." And so I go down the corner. There's Doug sitting on the end of the bed, plaster, scratches on his face, plaster on his shoulder. "Robert tried to kill me." The first time I made him pay to have the drywall fixed. And it cost them, I don't know, $30-some to have this hole. They pushed the doorknob through the door, through the wall. And the next time, when they had all this damage done, I says, "Who are you going to call to get this fixed?" Robert says, "I know how to do this." The two of them know how to drywall, and they bought all the stuff, the paint, the whole thing, fixed it themselves, and you couldn't
Good.
tell.
Wow.
That was a lesson there. You're going to put your head through the wall, you're going to fix it.
Yeah, because Robert just a couple of months ago told me, he says, I got some drywall to do at home. He says, I'm going to do it myself. He says, I learned how to do it.
That's one way
So-
to do it.
So we're going to go to break, and we will be right back.
You're coming to shoot in Las Vegas. There's nowhere else like it. You're going to need a few things. That's where Got Films has got you. Crew, got it. Equipment, got it. Creative, got it. Locations, got it. Experts in all things filming Las Vegas, got it. This isn't a game. This isn't a trick. This is your production, your reputation, and your money on the line. Got Films has got your back, front, and everything in between. Got Films. Got it?
Welcome back to the Rise Above show. I am Joe Perroni,
I'm Heidi Mancini.
and with our special guest.
Terry Banich.
So one of the things that we wanted to talk about today, because we talk about we're the Rise Above show. So I want to talk about how all of us go through some really, really difficult things, and how we can kind of get past those. And one of the things I know about you is that, it's all these great things you've done in the medical field. Probably the best thing you've done is you were married for 43 years.
44.
44
But
years.
who's counting?
But who's counting? And, not only is it special because it is, but in this day and age, it's like everybody's getting divorced. It's like higher than 50%. And you were able to do it and raise a great family. And your wife was a nurse and you're a doctor. So I think there's a lot of wisdom in there. So can you tell us about your wife?
My wife was wonderful. I was really playing above my game. I was very fortunate when I met her. Mimi, I was just my first couple days in a hospital as a medical student. My brother was a surgeon at that same hospital, didn't go there very frequently. Just before I started working in the hospital, my brother called me up and says, I met the most beautiful nurse. She's on the 7th floor of this hospital. I said, don't do me any favors, because it always was someone who could get him tickets to like the Blackhawk games or Cubs. She was the daughter of the manager of Wrigley Field, or it was always it wouldn't be obvious at the beginning, but it became obvious after I'd meet this horrific person and have a terrible date and say to him, what in the world were you thinking? He's, our father can get tickets to the Cubs game. So when he told me about this movie, it's just in one ear and out the other, because he was 14 years older than him. And so I started this clerkship at this hospital, and we're on a tour, and I got my little white coat and white pants, and we get on this floor, and I'm looking through windows into the nursing station, and there's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. And I look at my watch. Yeah, it's the right time. It would be that shift. It's the right floor.
That must be that hunger.
It gets to be dinner time, and I'm in the cafeteria line. And as a medical student, they gave you little pieces of paper with like 10 cents on them, 5 cents, and they looked like confetti. But that's what you were supposed to take. You get this little envelope with them, and that's how you'd buy your food in the hospital commissary. So I'm in line the first day I'm there in the hospital, and she's behind me
Oops.
in the line. And I turn around, and she didn't have a name tag on. So I moved down with the tray.
Yeah, first problem.
It's the first problem.
And I turn around, look at her, and
And you couldn't text her.
I had to talk
You had to
to her.
face
I had
this.
to talk to her.
So all I said was, "Hi, you must be Mimi." And she said, "What's it to you?" At which time my throat got tight. I think I got all red, and it was like, oh my God, So I get down to the end, and now I take the tray and I go to the cashier, and I got this handful of these little things, and the cashier says, "Is he with you?" And I'm looking at the cashier like, what? And I hear this voice say, "Yes, he is." And the cashier gives me $11 in change. Now, all I had were these paper things, which she took none of, and gave me $11. And I'm totally confused. And I turn around, and it's Mimi. What that did was we used to talk, just talk. I'd meet her an hour before she started her shift, and in the evening, I'd get another medical student, so there'd be no impropriety, and we'd walk her the 2 or 3 blocks home. Did this for, I guess, 2 weeks straight. Knew she was going to be married. She had a big engagement ring on. I felt pretty safe, big 2-carat diamond ring. She was getting married in 3 months. I knew his name. I knew everything about him. She knew about my girlfriend. And we just talked. And then one day, 2 weeks into this, my roommate started to notice. He said, "You have the same clothes on that you had yesterday." And it's like, oh, yeah, I didn't get to bed. And we'd be going off to the hospital again. And he said, "What'd you do?" I said, "I just talked to her on the phone." I said, "I came home." I said, "Walked her home. Drove home, talked to her on the phone all night long." And he goes, "What's going on?" I said, "I have no idea." I said, "I have no idea." 2 weeks after I met her, I would sit on the floor where she would be working, and I would be writing out the paperwork I'd have to do as a medical student or study. And she brought me a dinner tray. And I said to her, "Do you do this for all the guys?" And she said, "Only those I love." And she walked out of the room. And I stared. It was a cork board that was on the wall, a message board. And I stared. I think I could draw that cork board. I just stared at it. I never ate the tray, anything on the tray or anything, thinking about, she said she loved me. So she comes back in to get the tray, and I stood up and I said, "If you love me, marry me." And she said, "Okay, I will." We were married 11 months later. We waited that long so that my mother wouldn't think she was pregnant.
Oh, see, that's how I did.
And when I asked her to marry me, I had never touched her. I'd never physically ever touched her. Never held her hand, never did anything. I knew more about her from talking to her, and she knew more about me. That was like on a Thursday. On Saturday, we're going to meet the parents. Okay? So we drive to the suburbs, a little bungalow with a breezeway between the garage and the, typical in Chicago, and they had an Airedale. Grandma and Grandpa had an Airedale. So she walks in the house, goes in the house, I'm playing with the dog, and I hear her mother say, "Oh, honey, you're home. I have the baker on the phone. Wants to know if the cake is half chocolate and half vanilla or all vanilla. The wedding cake." And I walked in the kitchen then. And this is the picture, the avocado green princess phone hanging with the long cord hanging on the wall. And her mother looks at Mimi. She looks at me. She looks at Mimi. She looks at me. She looks at the phone and says, "I'm going to have to call you back." And her father was standing in the closet, and the hot water tank was just leaking water. And I walked up to him, and the first thing I said to him, I said, "Your hot water tank's broke." And he said, "No." No kidding. And he says, "I got to call a plumber." I said, "No, you don't." I said, "I'll change the hot water tank." I says, "I've worked as a surveyor. I know everybody at the plumbers union. We'll get the company to bring the hot water tank out. We'll go to lunch." And I said, "They'll bring all the stuff and I'll put the tank in." And he goes, "Yeah, sure." I said, "Watch." So I got on the phone, and if you're nice to people all the way along the line, people are nice to you. And I knew from talking to one of the guys at the union that he lived out there. He lived someplace out there because I was at his house sometime for a picnic from the plumbers union, because my pension plan as a surveyor was with the plumbers union, and my father was a plumber. So the guy put a hot water tank on the back of his old Cadillac, brought the wrenches, pipes, the valves, and everything, the caulk. And he says, "When you're done using it, bring it back, and we can square up when you come back with the tools." And so I put the hot water tank in. 11 years later, Mimi and I were out here, and the phone rings, and it's her father. And he goes, "Your hot water tank's broke." I said, "You're going to have to call a plumber." He says, "Yeah, see, Ma, I told you he's not going to come back here to change the hot water tank." And the phone hangs up.
That's great. That's great.
We had a great, Mimi and I, when we got married, I think the most important thing was that the two of us had talked beforehand that we were going to be totally present that moment that we got married. And I remember standing there, feeling the collar on my shirt, feeling the temperature of the air. When we knelt down at we got married in church, and knelt down at the wood kneelers in front of the sanctuary. I remember feeling the wood and the texture of it. I can still bring that all back. So during the hard times of our marriage, I was present, when I got married, and so was she. So it was like never going to go away.
Yeah. So tell me about some of the hard, you don't have to tell me the details, but like during the hard times, it seems like these days, the first second things get difficult, everybody starts facing away, looking for something different.
Oh, I think that's true. I think we have a disposable society. I think the only part of marriage that really is important is commitment. There isn't any magic. You're either going to stay shoulder to shoulder, back to back, and cover each other, or there's no sense in doing it to begin with. When you have a contract that says for better and for worse, until death do your part, you wouldn't sign that. First of all, Mimi and I used to laugh about what we thought was worse. Now we got something that's even worse.
Yeah.
And I could always imagine something worse. And as long as I could imagine something worse, it wasn't that bad. And Mimi had a chronic illness. She developed it 7 years after we got married. And it wasn't her fault. And so it was an illness. It took her life. When she died, she weighed 63 pounds. but she was my wife, no matter what she looked like. Guys are funny. I've talked to guys about this. I used to picture her, like when women say, does this make my butt look big, or do I have wrinkles, or I need Botox? It's like, I see you the day I met you.
Yeah.
That's the image in my head. Women, I don't think women really appreciate that. Guys are pretty simple. I mean, when we would argue, I would always try to picture her standing next to me in church when we got married. And then it's kind of hard to argue, because it starts to, this is stupid, that was, and we promised ourselves before we got married we would never go to bed mad.
That's the old
And
rule.
so there were times that we spent up till 3 o'clock in the morning. I remember that.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I remember that, but
We have to remember that. We have a little argument. We have to, because
You know,
what I
I-
do that's bad?
you know,
I go in the other room, and I go in the other room until I can cool off. And then I end up back in our bed, like an hour later.
Mimi and I,
He's like, well,
you know what? I think it's,
Can't fix
you know
that.
what?
I can't fix that one.
I wouldn't walk away.
Yeah.
What I would do, it'd be better if you took a nice, soft cord, tied it to Joe's wrist, tie it to yours, and have it be 4 feet, just like if you were diving and you were diving with your buddy, or put 2 tennis balls on it, and you can't let go. And you have to stand there and hold on to this thing and talk this out. Because all it is a miscommunication. And, women and guys just don't acutely go crazy. Something sets this off. And I read, God, long before we were married, 2 people can't argue if one is listening. And I used to just listen, and then sure as shooting she would say something like, "You're not saying anything, you're not listening to me," and I could repeat what she said, because I used to just keep telling myself she's not crazy. Something in this whole collage of your mother never liked me either, and all this other stuff, is something that's bothering her. And if I'm talking, if I'm responding to everything she says, I'll never hear it. And then this is going to go on and on and on. So I really think having 2 tennis balls and staying in the same room and just shrugging your shoulders and say, okay, we're gonna talk about this. You talk first, and then I'll talk, and then you just keep doing that until it's straightened out. But you got to accept the fact that you're not crazy, and that you love each other, and it's worth doing. It's worth not arguing. It doesn't solve
You ever
anything.
get to a point where you have to just agree to disagree sometimes?
Yeah, sure. That's respecting another person's view on the world. That is one of the basic tenets of this neurolinguistic programming.
Right.
That I don't judge you for how you look at the world. And your behaviors, or whatever you do, is not you. It's just your behavior. So that you learn how to, with the training that I've gone through, to separate behavior from, personalities, and respect people as human beings, and that they have different perceptions. You said it before. We project out what we perceive. And that is so true. Another way of saying it is the map
It's not the territory. Yes. High five. I've been waiting for the whole 55 minutes to say that. The map is not the territory.
Yeah, it's so true.
Where I don't have reality, you don't have reality, because we perceive things differently, right? Yeah.
I'm so
I
glad
love
that I had you on as a guest. I knew it. I knew it. I
The-
knew it from the first night I saw him at the gym.
You know, it's
Terence
so
training, yeah.
it's so interesting. Like women, I don't gender. I'm not having a gender comparison, but I mean, two people go into a same room and examine the same thing. Mimi and I did this once. We looked at a picture, and then put the picture down. It was with that Paul Eichmann thing where the instant. You remember that show that was on TV where he'd be able to read facial expressions in milliseconds. I don't know what it was called. I can't remember. But anyhow, we'd look at a picture, and I'd say things like, "Did you notice the couch didn't have one leg?" And she says, "The tapestry and the drapes was slightly different than the tapestry in the chair." The things are processed. We observe this same thing. Comes into our brains, our biases, our experiences,
Absolutely.
our programs. That's what interests. That's what processes the information. So the woman looks at it, sees the color changes, the subtle things, says, "Oh, I like the shape of the chair." The guy says, "The chair's leg is broke." It's just, nobody's right. It's just totally different perceptions.
Yeah, exactly. I know we don't have a lot of time, but yeah, Heidi was right. I sensed it too. I love that you came on the show because besides everything, you're a perfect example when we ask people, "Who are you?" Basic question, and they say, "Well, I'm my job." And you're a perfect example of somebody who obviously you extract money from the universe by being a doctor, but you're so much more than that. You could talk all day long and not actually talk about the medical field. There's all these other things going on there about how you perceive things. I really love that. So thanks for coming on today.
I think that I take care of people. And people, I look at, our only existence is in our minds. And so you're really an interference pattern stored in my mind. And my mind's not in my brain. My mind is out here. It's consciousness. And we're part of a universal consciousness. So that's why some people can pick up, different information.
Different information.
So we only have 2 minutes to go. Can I ask you how you're doing?
After my wife's passing?
Yeah, it's a new role, kind of a whole identity, different looking at life. How are you?
At the beginning, I was crazy. I had 2 therapists and a psychiatrist that were my friends, but they used to call me up and say, "Let's go to dinner."
Right.
And I'd say, "I'm fine. We're going to dinner."
As soon as you say you're fine, you're not.
Yeah. And now I've done so much introspection, so much studying, and Mimi's here. She's here just like she always was. She's in my mind and in my heart. So I'm still married. And I think I always will be.
I didn't notice.
Huh?
Do you wear a ring?
No. I have her ring on my neck.
Very
She had a
nice.
little finger.
She was little.
She had a little finger.
But I thank you for having me. It was fun
Thank
talking
you.
to
Yes, this was great. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank
And
you.
We know each other on different
We know
levels.
each other on different levels now. So the gym
Yeah.
and your girl Arlen, who I know you just love. I had
I
to
know.
give a little plug for Arlen.
Yes.
My trainer. She's
Yeah.
like my confessor. I love her
Confessor.
dearly.
She's a good girl.
So thanks
Thank
for
you.
watching the Rise Above show. I am Joe Perroni.
Heidi Mancini.
Terry Banich.
Thank you.
Thank you.